Hello chess friends and welcome to Zozarov's chess channel and welcome to a real wild game that was played in 1995 between the two former world champions Veselin Topalov and Vladimir Kramnik. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the rivalry between Kramnik and Topalov, but back in 2006, the two of them played the World Championship match, and in one particular moment of the match game, Topalov accused Kramnik that he cheated because Kramnik visited the bathroom through the match game many times, and this match game, the World Championship match in 2006 was really wild. After this match game, basically they became arch enemies. They never shook their hands when they played against each other in the later stage of their career, so it was really brutal rivalry between the two of them. But back in the 90s, still I think they were in good relations, and this game in 1995 shows really the attacking brilliancy by both of them, because both of them are really sharp players. Both of them are searching for tactics and for some attacking opportunities. So let's check out now the game. Here Topalov played with the white piece and opened with the move e4. Kramnik responds with c5 the Sicilian, knight to f3, knight to c6, and now we have d4, c takes d4, knight to d4, and now knight to f6, attacking the e4 pawn, and here knight to c3. Now these days very popular is this Sveshnikov Pelikan Sicilian, the Lasker Sicilian, with the move e5, challenging the knight on immediately, but then you weakening a little bit your d5 square, and also you have trouble with the d6 backward pawn. But okay, in the game here Kramnik played a different line. He plays the move d6. The d6 moves gives black a better flexibility in the game. Still, black can transpose into a Najdorf with a6, or maybe into a Dragon Sicilian with bishop to g7, or into the Chevening setup with the move e6 and then bishop to e7. Here Topalov plays the move bishop to c4, and many times you'll see that players are responding here with the move e6. Here Kramnik played a more aggressive way, queen to b6, attacking the knight on d4 immediately. Of course, getting with the queen in an early stage of the game is not sometimes a good idea, because the queen can be endangered. Here in the game, Topalov played knight from d to b5, preparing bishop to e3, kicking away the queen. Here, if you try, for instance, knight to e2 in order to protect the knight, that's one of the problems of this setup of white here. Then queen to b4 is happening, and you lose the bishop on c4. So that's why you have to get rid of the queen here. Knight to b5 was played by Topalov. We have a6, but of course we have this intermediate attack against the queen, bishop to e3, and now queen to a5, and now the knight can again retreat here to d4. So knight takes e4 is not such a powerful idea here, because we will simply play queen to f3, counter-attacking, and then have some trouble here around the square f6. Here, if you try, for instance, knight to f6 in order to defend this position, then you get knight to c6, b takes c6, queen to c6, and you lose the rook. So it's a problem. So that's why it's not a good choice here to take out the pawn on e4 immediately. So let's go back to this position. Queen to a5, we have knight to d4, knight to e5, taking out also this knight is not so powerful. Then you're basically inviting your opponent's queen into the game. Now white would have a centralized position. Every piece is good, every piece is well placed on the board. So that's why here after the move knight to d4, knight to e5, played by Vladimir Kramnik, and we have now bishop to d3, protecting this pawn. Bishop to b3 is not working anymore. Now this idea knight to e4 could work, because then the queen to f3 idea doesn't work, because we don't have anymore the knight on c6. Then this tactic wouldn't work here. So that's why you have to play bishop to d3. Knight to d3 is not so powerful, because c takes d3 will happen, and then white would have a powerful pawn central control. We'll simply play knight to b3 and advance the pawn to d4, and we'll centralize the pawns, and we'll have a very nice central control with both of these pawns. So taking out is not positionally good here in the game. Kramnik tried knight to e4, knight to g4, knight from e to g4, attacking the bishop on e3, and here we have bishop to c1. Bishop to d2 would actually be a very a nice mistake here by white, because queen to c5 could happen, and then you have to retreat with the knight, and the problem is now your f2 pawn is hanging, so it's really a problem. So now after the move bishop to c1, like Topalov played, queen to c5 is not working here immediately, because actually we can castle. The problem is now you cannot take out the knight. You see the bishop is not here anymore. In this particular line, this would be possible to take out the knight, but here when the queen is here on d1 and the bishop on d3, we would have then the discovered attack with bishop to b5, and you will lose the queen. So that's why it's not possible here now to attack the knight. But still here Vladimir Kramnik played the move g6, developing of course his dark square bishop, and we have now knight to b3, kicking away the queen, queen to b6, and now queen to e2, protecting the f2 pawn, and now bishop to g7. Okay, it's really a wild game already. You see many times both of these players have prepared some tactics, have prepared some attacks, but still Vladimir Kramnik has, I think, a decent game. When you come when you play as black, you want to have at least some kind of setup. If this knight get challenged with h3, still we can cement it on e5. If the knight get challenged further with the move f4, then of course we can retreat, but sometimes it's a bad choice to advance the pawn on f4 immediately, because this bishop could be very dangerous. This dragon bishop now sort of would be very dangerous if you weaken the pawn structure in front of the king on dark squares too much. So here f4 immediately played anyway by Topalov, and that's what I loved about this game. You see Topalov is a really sharp attacker. There's nothing wrong with that move immediately, because still we can play bishop to d2 and queenside castling, but still if this bishop comes somehow into the game, this could be very dangerous. As I said, you could get attacked on dark squares. Here knight to h5, very aggressive move again by Vladimir Kramnik. You see both players are not castling in the game. Knight to d5, attacking the queen. We have queen to d8, and now bishop to d2. Bishop to d2 is very important, because if here, for instance, Kramnik would have played here the move bishop to b2, then you would have some tactics here. Rook to b1, attacking the bishop. Bishop has to retreat, but then you have a very annoying move to handle bishop to a5, and you see now the fork will come knight to c7, and I think it's a losing game then for black. So that's why black cannot lose any tempi here. So that's why e6 was played by Kramnik. Still Topalov plays this move bishop to a5, but now Kramnik has a counter attack with the move queen to h4. So you see it's all about tempi in this game. In the game g3 was played. We have knight to g3, we have knight to c7, the fork, king to e7, and now finally Topalov took h takes g3. We have queen to g3, and now king to d1, and now knight to f2. Here Vladimir Kramnik plays also a counter fork. He wants to also take out the rook, but the problem is now that when black takes the knight, still white is continuing the rook, pardon me, then still white is continuing the game with an extra piece. So you have to be careful here in the game. King to d2 was played by Veselin Topalov, and here the fun really starts. It's already a really wild game. You see both players didn't castle, the kings are in the center. Now it's all about tactics. It's really a tactical battle here from both sides. Here actually the first mistake makes Vladimir Kramnik. He should have played queen to f4. Still it's a better regulation here for Kramnik, but at least we're hanging on to this position. And if queen to e3, we would then simply play queen to e3, after king to e3, knight to g4, and we're trying maybe to push simply this pawns, although here maybe we could have some trouble, or we should simply take here the rook on h1. But that's the main issue, I think. After knight takes a8, the problem is now still white is continuing the game with an extra piece, and here I think at least black could push the pawn h5, h4, g5, f6, so would have at least some kind of a compensation. But here Vladimir Kramnik makes a mistake. He takes out the knight, the rook with the knight to h1 immediately, and now Veselin Topalov makes mistakes. He takes out also the rook. A better idea is now simply to take out the knight. And the rook to h1 is much better. Now after the move queen to f4, king to d1, okay, bishop to d7 could be played. Now it's time for white to take, but now after the move rook to a8, the good part now for white is here that white gets rid of this very annoying knight on h1. Now the position is more and more simplified. What we want to do is simply improve the position of our minor pieces, play something like bishop to d2, and I don't think that the king is so endangered anymore. We can even maneuver the king to c1, then to b1, and secure the king and simply continue the game with an extra piece. But Topalov went immediately for the rook, knight takes a8, and here comes the problem. Here we have now again the move knight to f4, but now after the move queen to e3, again a check, queen to e2, again a check, and now after queen to h2, again a new check. Here Vladimir Kramnik decides that he's not trying this 3 times perpetual. He's trying here to win the game. Bishop to h6, and you see now the knight is still on the board with the support of the bishop, with the support of the queen, and maybe with the support of this bishop, and the rook could also come into the game. Black has still enough material to attack white's king. I think in this line, as we said, if white would have taken out the knight, then the position would get more and more simplified, and I think then white would easily defend this position. So it was Topalov's mistake here. Bishop to h6, we have king to c3. If you try king to d1 in order to get back with your knight, with your king here to the first rank, then you get this fork, knight to f1. You could maybe escape to e1, but now the problem is you get bishop to f4. That's the main issue. You cannot take here the knight, then you get bishop to g3, and you lose simply the queen. Bishop to b6 would be sort of an option in order to defend this position, but then knight to d3, c takes d3, and then queen to h1. You have to hide, and now here after queen to f1, king to f1, now bishop to d7, I think is perfectly fine. Although we are down a piece, but the evaluation is much better now for black. Here you have to play something like knight to c7, but now rook to c8 could actually also trap the knight. The knight is out of game. The knight doesn't have good squares to escape, so we would simply play d5 and then simply take out the knight, and we would then have here 2, maybe even 3 connected pass pawns on the king side. So after move, as we said, bishop to h6, here Veselin Topalov plays king to c3, and he gets now towards the center of the board. You know, basically the basic rules of king hunts are to get your opponent's king towards the center. So we want to bring the king somewhere here. Maybe if the position allows it, b4 c5. We're basically inviting our opponent's king into the game. Then we are trying to, of course, attack it with some minor piece activity and even to checkmate it, our opponent's king if it's possible. After the move king to c3, we have queen to e5. Now again, Kramnik makes sort of an inaccuracy. A better idea is simply to play here queen to e2, again trading off the queens, simplifying the position. Now knight to g3, after bishop to d3, bishop to f4, and again try this idea h4, h5, h4. And in this particular scenario, you see this knight is very important as it is covering the h1 square, so there's no defense. I think you cannot get your rook here. You could maybe attack the bishop with rook to f1, but still this bishop could get cemented with e5, and then we would have a compact position. And the problem, I think, of white is that many pieces are here on the queen side, so I think pushing the pawn here h5, h4, h3 would be winning for black for sure. But queen to e5 again is a new complication in the game. Here king to b4, Veselin Topalov plays, of course, the correct move. It's, I think, the only square that can help out white in order to defend this position, but still it's a complicated game. Although the computer evaluation is better for white, it's a 1.5 evaluation here for white, but the king is naked here, the king is endangered, the king could get attacked. And here after the move knight to g3, we have queen to e1 by Topalov. He's protecting, of course, his dark squares. We have bishop to g7, we have knight to b6, and now d5 by Vladimir Kramnik. He's trying to get use of the d6 square and attacking the king from that square. King to a4. Now Topalov makes again a mistake. King to a4. A better idea is simply to play rook to d1. waiting a little bit, and now after something like knight to e4, we would simply play here c4, and we're trying to break the position somehow. We're trying to defend, we're trying to get our king somehow back into safety, maybe even take out the knight would here possibility, because now queen to d6 wouldn't be such a powerful idea, because we could finally hide with our king and then really simplify the position. No checks are possible anymore. If you try knight to c5, we'll simply trade off the pieces, and we'll try even further to trade off the pieces. So really wild stuff. King to a4 here in the game. We have bishop to d7 now by Vladimir Kramnik. Great move, because after knight to d7, it's not the point that we want to take out the knight, we want to create further madness with the move b5. Here in the game, king to b4 again played, and now we have king to d7, we have bishop to b6. It's again a new mistake here by Veselin Topalov. Here knight to c5. Maybe this move at least helps out white for a while. At least we're trying to defend this position. You have to play king to c6, and now again maybe trying to trade off the queens, queen to d5, and now queen to f2, at least protecting our knight somehow. Maybe bishop to f8 would be the continuation by black, but now we're hanging at least for a while onto this position, trying to get maybe the rook into the game, and still to at least make a draw. But still, it's a better of course position for black, because this pin is really annoying. What we want to do then is also somehow include the rook into the game, maybe rook to c8, getting our king somewhere here to b7, and still continuing our pressure against the weak c5 knight. But bishop to b6, huge blunder, because here in the game Vladimir Kramnik should have played simply knight to e4, and then trying some even some checks here, trying to open maybe somehow also the a file. It would be a better continuation. Then bishop to e4 would be the continuation, but now queen to b2. The main serious threat is here after potential bishop to d3 is then to play king to c6. That's the main issue. Now for something like bishop to c5, that's the main goal here. As I said, the move a5, you cannot take out with the knight. That's the main issue, because your king is pinned. If you take out with the king, then the rook will come very active into the game, so it would be a forced checkmate. King to a5, and then here simply rook to a8. You can maybe cover with the bishop, but still rook to a7 is winning. So after the move bishop to b6, you see knight to e4 was the best line for Kramnik. But as I said, it was really wild game. Here in the game, queen to b2 was played. We have e takes d5, rook to c8. Very nice move by Kramnik. He leaves the position like this in the center. The rook comes very active into the game. We have now here d takes e6, king to e8, and here bishop to c5. A new mistake by Topalov, but again, you don't have good moves. The best suggested move by the engine is simply bishop to b5, sacrificing back some material. If you try here maybe something like king to e takes f7 to attack the king, then king to f7 is of course perfectly fine, and queen to f2 maybe a check, but knight to f5 and it would be game over. You cannot protect anymore this idea. Bishop to c3 is the serious threat. Again, we have also then maybe some a5 again idea, so you cannot protect anymore your dark squares. It would be game over. But after move queen to b2, here e takes d5, we have rook to c8. This was the line, and now bishop to c5 by Topalov. It was a huge blunder, because now bishop to c3, really great move. It's a decoy, but then a deflection. So decoy deflection tactic, decoying the queen to the square c3, where the queen is protected by the king. And now a5, again with the same idea. You cannot take out with the knight. Your king is pinned here. King to b5, and now we can take out the queen after the move queen to c3. It was game over in this position. Topalov resigned. So really wild stuff. This decoy deflection tactic in the end was really beautiful. Great games by both of them. You see how chess was played back in the 90s. I think in the 90s many things were better. Even the chess, as I said, I like the movies from the 90s. I'm just kidding, of course. Chess is evolving, but still there were really beautiful sharp attackers back in the 90s. For instance, Alexei Shidov, Vasily Ivanchuk was in his prime, Garry Kasparov, of course, and it was simply a different era in chess where simply these games were played with beautiful tactics, with beautiful sacrifices, and really a great attacking motif. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. It was such a beautiful game. If you want to see more attacking brilliances like this and some other wild games, check out my best chess games of all time series. Here is the link, and you can also check out my commented chess games played by computers with the best games played by Stockfish, Lila C0, Alpha Zero, and so on. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.